underway. Tonight's shir will focus on Daf Gimel, Amud Bet, Rosh Hashana to Daf Dalet, Amud Aleph, but we're going to look things up in the Tanakh. But we're dedicating the shir tonight. I want to thank Art and Shira sponsoring tonight. Lulu Nishmat, Art's mother, Yacha Leah Bat Merkel HaKohen. Markel HaKohen, Neshama Shavan Aliyah. And Lori and I are sponsoring the shiurim this week. Lulu Nishmat, my grandfather, my grandmother, my grandfather, Meyer Engel, Meir Ben Chaim Yaakov, Neshama Shavan Aliyah, and my bubby Eva Filler, Chava Bracha Bat Ben Sion Halev, and Neshama Shavan Aliyah. So we're going to be looking at some things in the Gemara that have to do with dates and things having to do with one of the hardest eras of Jewish history to try to categorize and quantify and order, and that's the Persian Empire. It's very, very challenging to do. We'll try to do it. We're not going to get that far. You'll be left with a lot of questions. The truth is, some of the questions, I don't want to say insoluble, but it's not so easy to find the answers to them. It has to do with the question of who was the king of Persia when, and we care particularly about this question against the backdrop of trying to understand Jewish versus non-Jewish kings and the dating of their kingdoms. Remember that the basic premise we've been working with is Jewish kings function according to the Jewish or Hebrew ordering of the year, of months, which Jewish kings is Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Non-Jewish kings seem to function by Tishrei, which is the general way of the Rosh Hashana for Malachim, for kings. Interesting, by the way, the debate is, when is Rosh Hashana, when we are Mamlich HaKadosh Baruch Hu as the king? Is it Tishrei or Nisan? Interesting, yeah? Okay, but that's more philosophy. I don't want to go down that road. What we'll see tonight is a Gemara which will make some claims that, if we have time, and I hope we will, we'll not only be looking up those psukim that it's based on, but then we're going to see how the Baal Hamaor, Rabbi Nuzrachi Halevi, Rabbi Wiederblank referenced him yesterday, actually, Rabbi Nuzrachi Halevi, who lived in the 12th century in Provence, and he had a different view sometimes of I would say, the orthodoxies of the day. I said that in petitutim because there's no such thing as orthodoxy, but the Rif was considered absolutely authoritative. What he wrote in his codification of the Gemara, what did the Rif do? He extracted Agadata. He extracted much of the discussion back and forth, and he gave you, by the order of Shas, Brachot, and then going into other Masechtas from there, but starting in that order, what the halacha is. So when people wanted to know the halacha, they would look in the Rif. The problem was the Rif was organized like the Talmud. So if you knew where to find things in the Talmud, you could find things in the Rif. It didn't have a categorization system by topics, right? So Masechet Psachim, they want to learn about Kiddush. Oh, that's in the end of Masechet Psachim, and Arvei Psachim, it's everything about Kiddush is in there. Understand? Therefore, later codifications that happened, the Rambam being most famous among them, but many others as well, found other ways to codify and to categorize what they were talking about. But everyone looked to the Rif. To get smicha, you had to know Shas, and you had to know the Rif. Till the Tur came around, then you had to know the Tur. Anyway, it came later. Another organizational system as well. Point being that the Baal Hamaor will actually take issue with the words of the Gemara and what we're reading. I'm prepping you on this because we're going to read some things. You're going to be shaking your head. I don't understand how this could be. Look at Daf Gimel Amud Bet, and we're at the word mativ. We read some of this before, but we're kind of reading it again. The general order, I forgot to mention, one other thing. I'm sorry. The general order of empires that we need to know for this story is Bavel caused the first exile. It happened over a period of years. It wasn't one moment. The final blow is... two exiles to Bavel.
One to Egypt at the same time.
And one to Egypt at the same time. But we're calling it the Galut Bavel because Bavel was the main actor in it. Bavel then is conquered by the Persians and the Medians. They're actually working together. Madai Uparas, Paras Madai, they're together. Eventually, they become just known as the Persian Empire, but the truth is they're Paras Umadai, they're together. Then after Paras came Yavan. Greece.
Right.
Greece probably showed up, we think, and we're not going to solve these problems all tonight, but just to think about it, by what we know, Alexander of Macedon arrives in the Holy Land in the year 332 BCE. It's 2023 in the secular years. 332 BCE he arrives. He dies a few years later, by the way. He's a young man. He's like 30 or something. He comes to the Holy Land 332 BCE. According to what we know, the Persian Empire takes over from the Babylonian Empire sometime after the Babylonian Empire has conquered and destroyed even the Beit HaMikdash. That's in 586 BCE. Babylon destroys the Churban Bayit Rishon. And then at some point in between 586 and the new dedication of the second Beit HaMikdash in 516 BCE, 70 years later, there's a turnover from the world of Bavel to the world of Paras. So that in the year circa 539 or 538 BCE, something like that, the king, Cyrus, Koresh, permits the Jewish people to go back to the land of Israel to be there, to build a temple, etc. But they don't build it immediately for various reasons having to do with politics, internal politics of the world, not of the Jews, but internal politics within the world of Judea, Medunat Yehud, as it's already known then, and a whole story. And that's what we're going to be talking about tonight, is that period in the Persian Empire. Okay, now, even after this happens, after the second Beit HaMikdash is built, there are other kings of the Persian Empire, because I just told you that the Beit HaMikdash, second Beit HaMikdash, is dedicated in the year 516 BCE, or that's what we think. Okay, but there are a slew of other kings from 516 BCE all the way down until the Greeks don't show up till 332 BCE. There's a long time there. It's sometimes referred to, I think, I don't know if I've coined it, I think maybe Rabbi Menachem Leibtag, Moriva Rabbi Linyani Tanakh coined it. It's like the black hole of Jewish history, where you're trying to figure out how do the years add up. Now, if you open, this is one of the areas where people had criticisms of the world of ArtScroll. I'll tell you right off the bat, because ArtScroll had a particular dating system which didn't jive with the world of scholarship, academia, etc. What's the challenge? According to the Gemara in Masechet Yuma, the first Beit HaMikdash stood for 410 years. The second Beit HaMikdash stood for 420 years. You understand how the math doesn't work out already?
Right.
If it's a total of 420 years, and I just told you it was inaugurated in 516 BCE, and when was the Churban of the second Beit HaMikdash? 70 CE. That's more than 400 years, 420 years. Right. So something doesn't add up. And just so you realize, now, I'm prefacing all this because when we get to the Baal Hamaor, you'll see a Rishon backing up this idea. But when we're talking about Ikari Emunah, when we're talking about Inyanim of Halacha, there's not a question of a choice one way or the other. We follow what the Masorah tells us, the Halacha, etc. And we learned about this yesterday, again, in the Shir, for those who were there, and the link was or will be sent out shortly by the office. It was recorded, the lecture yesterday, excellent lecture in my estimation, and a lot of food for thought there. But when we talk about certain other things, like questions of history or science, things like that, and this is very important for the rest of our learning in Masechet Rosh Hashana, Chazal knew what they knew. They had what they had. But it didn't mean they were infallible or that whatever they said was actually always historically exactly how things fell out. They're not historians. Chazal are not trying to be historians. Now, why is all this so important? Because of what we're going to see tonight. Okay? In the discussion of what is the dating according to the Jewish calendar, according to the meaning Nisan, kings of the Jewish people, versus Tishrei as the kings of the non-Jewish people, we'll find a strange a quirk in the system. And that quirk has to do with the fact that in our own Tanakh, you find a dating system for a non-Jewish king using seemingly the Jewish calendar. How could that be? We just finished saying the non-Jewish kings use Tishrei as a starting point. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines down in the wide lines, Adaf Gimel Amud Bet. Okay? Well, that's what we're going to see. So let's see. Mativ Rav Yosef. B'yom esrim ve'arba lechodesh basisi b'shnat shtayim ledaryavesh. Okay? So there's one pasuk that says, in the 24th day, in the 6th month, in the 2nd year of Daryavesh. Uchtiv, and yet there's another pasuk that says, leave out the parenthesis, the brackets here. They're not supposed to be there. Bashvi be'esrim ve'echad lachodesh. Then there's another pasuk that says, in the 7th month, in the 21st day of that month. So says Rav Yosef, we're going to look up the pasuk in a minute. Says Rav Yosef, Vim ita bashvi, if it was now the 7th month, and from the 6th month, which we call Elul, to the 7th month, which we call Tishrei, and it's referring to a non-Jewish king named Daryavesh, Darius, so it should have said Bishnat Gimel Nibayale. It didn't mention the name of the year. Changing from month 6 to month 7. If we say that non-Jewish kings use the dating of Tishrei, which is the 7th month, then the transition from month 6 to month 7 in Tanakh, describing a non-Jewish king, should have said, and it was a new year for that same king. But there was no mention of a change of a year. How come? Sounds like it's the same year. Now, where are these psukim found? This is very important. When we look up these psukim in Sefer Chagai, super short sefer, but instructive to see it inside. Okay, so you're looking up Chagai, Perek, where are we here? Perek Aleph, Pasuk Tedvav, and then Perek Bet, Pasuk Aleph. So you look in Sefer Chagai. Chagai is Chagai, Zachar, and Malachi are three prophets. The end. You have it already. The page. Thank you. 7:10 in the Koren Tanakh. If you're looking it up again, you're looking for a Tanakh online or in your home. You can look on Sefaria.org. Go to texts, and you're looking for the book of Chagai. I'll remind you here. I say every single time. Take a message and then the shir. I say it every single time. The same thing. Who cares the number of the parak? The number of prakim is bunk to us. We don't care. What we care about is how it looks on the page. And when you look at a Tanakh, there's paragraphing. That's authoritative from our tradition. The number of chapters doesn't matter. So in other words, I make a big deal out of this because chapter 1, page 711, 711 in the Koren Tanakh. I'm using this version. You're looking in Chagai, chapter 1, verse 15. To chapter 2, verse 1 is actually the same section. It's not even two different paragraphs. It's the same parsha, which means it's not a change of topic. Biyom esrim ve'arba'a lechodesh bashishi b'shnat shtayim l'Daryavesh bashvi'i be'esrim ve'echad lechodesh hayad Hashem b'yad Chagai hanavi le'mor. So it happened on the day which is the 24th day of Elul in the 2nd year of Daryavesh the king. Doesn't even tell you what it was that happened. The Mefarshim explained what the event was. Doesn't matter for now. In the 7th month, on the 21st day, here's what Hashem said to Chagai Hanavi. Some say he said the same thing twice in 2 different times. It was like repeated, but it didn't say it was a new year. So Yosef says, aha, see? So it must have been the same year for him. But Daryavesh is not a Jewish king. So you see that really the non-Jewish kings also use the Jewish calendrical system for kings. And that seems to be a problem because one of the assertions we had learned last time in the last year is that for non-Jewish kings, it runs on the schedule of Tishrei, not of Nisan. Yeah.
Why is it assumed that they have to say it's a new year?
We took as a premise in this year, because we established it last time, the assertion was made, which is not being challenged, that when it comes to Jewish kings, the new year, fiscal year, shifts in Nisan.
Why just because they didn't say it was a new year can you not assume that it was a new year?
Oh,
just because they didn't say it was
right. Okay. Oh, sorry, I didn't understand your question. Thank you. For those on the line, if they didn't say it was a new year, how do you know it wasn't a new year? The answer is if there was a change in the year, it should have said so. The fact that it didn't, that's Rav Yosef's claim. You could argue, so there was a new year, but they didn't mention it. But why didn't they mention it? And it's in the same paragraph, which implies there's a continuity. Having already spoken about the fact that it's the 2nd year, it's a continuity to say it's still the 2nd year. All that changed was the month and the day of the month. So 6th month, 24th day, 7th month, 21st day. It's not a new year, because it was a new year. It would have told us it was a new year. And why didn't it repeat again 2nd year? Because it would be redundant. I told you in the pasuk before. And that's why I'm making a tzimis, if you will, about the fact that it's the same parshiyah. Forget that it's chapter 1, chapter 2. It doesn't matter to us. What matters when we look in the Tanakh, oh, it's one paragraph. So this one flows to the other. Had it been 2 different paragraphs, by the way, you could say, one was written here, one was written there. It was another year, but he left it out. But it was another year, and it didn't specify the year for some other extraneous reason. That's of Yosef's claim. The Gemara says, oh, don't worry about it. How come? How come you shouldn't worry about it? You shouldn't worry about it because when you look the Gemara here again, he quotes it. He says, Amar Rabbi Abahu, Koresh melech kasher haya. Lefichach manulo kamalcha Yisrael. Koresh, he was a kosher king. By the way, some of the Farshim Rashi here points out Koresh, Boggle, Kasher. Just it's Boggle. You know Boggle? Shake up the letters. Anagram, bananagrams. Koresh, Kasher. Now, was
Koresh the same as Daryavesh? I mean,
and that's the next question, isn't it? Didn't the pasuk we just read say Daryavesh? So the Gemara says, oh, it's Koresh. Koresh was a kosher king. Okay.
So it wasn't Daryavesh.
Aren't you confused?
Yeah.
Me too. And you, when you're reading this Gemara, just linear, you're just wondering, Echitachen, Koresh, Kasher, Daryavesh, is Koresh? Well, the same person? So how could that be? And indeed, these are the questions. So Matki Flo Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef launches an attack to defend his original question against Rabbi Baal. Yeah. So he points out, Chada, Di'im Kain, Kashu Kraya Hadade. You just created a conflict with other psukim. Why? Dichtiv, since there's another pasuk, this pasuk in Sefer Ezra, Veshetzi Baita Dina Ad Yom Tlata Lirach Adar Dihishnat Shet Lamalchut Daryavesh Malka. There's a pasuk in Ezra, which I don't think we have to look up right now, that the house was completed on the third day of the month of Adar, which was the 6th year of Daryavesh the king. So he's saying, wait a second. It says in this pasuk specifically in the 6th year of Daryavesh the king. Yeah. So you're mentioning Daryavesh, and it's in his 6th year, and it's Chodesh Adar, Vitanya, and we also know that we learned Be'otozman L'Shana Haba'ah, the same time, the next year, Allah Ezra Bavel, V'Galuto Imo. Ezra, right after this happened, after the house was completed, meaning the Beit HaMikdash completed, in the 6th year of Daryavesh, in the next year, Ezra made Aliyah. But what's the next year after the 3rd of Adar? It's Nisan. And that's what he says, by Dichtiv, as it says in the Psukim. Also in Sefer Ezra, one chapter later, what does it say? Vayavo Yerushalayim, B'chodesh HaChamishi, Hishnat HaShvi'it LaMelech. He came in the 7th year of the king. Well, let me ask, V'im Ita, if it's true that it's the 7th year, so Shnat HaShminit Mibayalei, it should have said the 8th year. How come? If he arrived in the 5th month and it crossed over the period of the Rosh Hashana for the kings, the non-Jewish king, like Daryavesh, who is somehow kosher and he's Koresh, which again you just like, but it's two different people. But the assumption of the Gemara somehow, strangely, is that they're somehow the same person. So Rav Yosef says, wait. Okay, I'm going to ask you another question. How could it be that this thing got finished in the 3rd of Adar, and then it went to the 3rd of Adar, then we got to the 5th month, and it says it's the 7th month. It should have maybe been the 8th. You're telling me two different people. There's Koresh, there's Daryavesh. It's two different people. What are you conflating one into two? Now, you're going to love the answer, and then I'll go dial back and try to explain it a little more in depth. Tana, we have a limud, who Koresh, who Daryavesh, who Artachshasta. It's the same guy. He has 3 names. He was called Koresh, he was called Daryavesh, he was called Artachshasta. How come? Koresh Shemelch Kasher Haya, Artachshasta al Shem Malchuto. He was called Artachshasta on the name of his kingdom, like the Pharaoh is called something. So the Artachshasta, George, give me a minute. The Artachshasta is called that. Umashmo, what is his real name? Not his regal name, not the name the Jews gave him because he was such a wonderful guy. His name was really Daryavesh. So the Gemara says, Mikol Makom Kashya. There's still a question over here. How did you conflate the 3? Now, by the by, let me step out of our framework for a minute of the Gemara. Historically, from what we understand, there was King Darius the Mede. He was from Madai. He was a popular name for kings. Then came King Cyrus, Koresh. Then came somebody else whose name is, in the secular world, Cambyses. Then came someone whose name was Daryavesh the first, who was Daryavesh the Persian, Darius I of Persian fame. So that person, Daryavesh the first, he's around in the year 516 BCE, which is when the second Beit HaMikdash is inaugurated. So now along comes the Gemara and says they're actually all the same person. And the same person was called different things at different times. The word Koresh was an honorific. There might have been a guy named Koresh at some point, but you know what? A later king who was a great guy, they called him Koresh, not because he was really literally Koresh, but because he was a Melech Kasher. So the Gemara here says, well,
Was he Esther's son?
what?
Was he Esther's
Now you're getting into Midrashim. Forget that now. I can't even go down that road. Is he Esther's son? Is he not Esther's son? I don't know.
Esther's
By the
son,
way,
Jewish.
there's a machloket. Who's Cambyses? Who is that? So some say that's Achashverosh, like from our story of Purim. And that would be before the second Beit HaMikdash is built. There's no Beit HaMikdash. That's what Esther's asking. Al Chatzia Malchut V'Te'as, right? I'll give you half the kingdom, but I won't give you the halfway point, which is the middle point between Hodu and Kush, which is Yerushalayim. I'm not going to let you build a Beit HaMikdash. So there's a good case to be made for that. And that's where the Midrashim come from, that Darius I is obviously really halachically Jewish, and that's why he had a Yish and a Shama, and that's why he permitted the finishing of the building of the second Beit HaMikdash. I'm not arguing against it at this moment. Huh?
That's why they call him kosher.
And that's why he was kosher. Right. Right. Right.
His dates.
Right. And that's why they counted his dates, fill out the point according to the Jewish count, because he's a Jewish guy. So secretly, wink, wink, nod, nod. And by the by, there's some, even if he's not actually, historically, personally, the son, Darius I, this guy, actually the son of Esther Malka. If that's actually, it's a medrash, it's a beautiful idea, but it's not meant to be taken historically, literally. If that's what's going on, I'm not poskening, but if it's going on, then you could still say, but since he's the one who inaugurated the Beit HaMikdash, so we give him the honorific that the calendric measurement of his rule goes according to the months of Nisan. After all, he enabled God to be, have a palace again in the world in Yerushalayim. So you could answer that. I think someone does. I don't remember who says that, but
Very true.
I'm not saying it's not. Didn't I preface this with it's going to be troubling? You'd be like, what? This is what? I don't understand. We didn't get to the Baal Hamaor yet, but I still have to get there tonight.
Let me tell you my trouble.
Yeah, you can go on. But George is waiting also. Yeah.
Sure.
Let George have a chance, and then George, go ahead.
Just to-
You're not contagious over the phone. Don't worry. Go ahead. You're muted again. Unmute.
So
Yeah.
I was just curious, what does anybody explain what Melech Kasher really is? What does that really mean?
Yeah, the fact that he allowed the Jewish people to go back to Israel, that's why they called him Melech Kasher. If you look in Rashi,
He just says Melech Kasher, yeah.
no,
Okay.
go higher. Look at
Okay.
in the narrow lines one in Rashi, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines down. Dibramatchil Koresh Melech Kasher haya klomar al shem sheya Kasher karu Koresh ushmo meid alav lefichach manu lo kemalchei Yisrael. Doesn't it sound exactly what Steve Cohen just suggested? He got the
Yeah.
character. He was a kosher guy. So they say, we put you in with the Jewish people. We love you so much. It's like you're Jewish. Koresh.
Okay.
Jewish. But if you keep reading, yeah. So where are we here? Skip down. Who Koresh? Saying it's all the same person. After Daryavesh Achar Achashverosh Nikra Koresh. Chazal assumed that the order is Koresh, Achashverosh, Daryavesh, 3 kings, and Achashverosh, and the Purim story is in between Koresh and Daryavesh. Okay, and that the second guy, third guy, Koresh, Achashverosh, Daryavesh, they called him Koresh again. How come? Just like the predecessor, before the predecessor, he's a good guy, so they gave him that name. That's what the Gemara is. That's the claim of the Gemara to try to solve. Don't make me problems that clearly it passed through from Adar to Nisan, and it didn't switch the years, right? That's with another guy, but our guy Daryavesh, who's Koresh, the one who's listed in here in Tanakh and Sefer Chagai, he's good. He's good. He's the Daryavesh, good guy. But there's going to be that you're going to, and therefore, so now, wait a minute. What about Rav Yosef's challenge? He said that Ezra made Aliyah in the Nisan. It actually doesn't, by the way, in the book of Ezra. He made Aliyah. He left in Nisan. He arrived in Chodesh Av into Yerushalayim. Took him all those months to travel with his group. But the reality is that in Adar, a month earlier, it finished the They had finished the Beit Mikdash. So it's kind of like, if it was finished and then it passed through Nisan, how come it didn't go to another year? It didn't. Something's weird. Yeah. Okay. Now back to Larry. Okay. Larry first. Yeah.
And is to the Jewish people, okay, Koresh was a wonderful guy. But the Jewish people didn't set the calendar for the non-Jewish kings.
True.
So how could we be saying that the year should be Nisan when the non-Jewish king was
Decide whatever they want. The answer is it's in our books. How do we date the non-Jewish or Jewish kings?
That
They might have had their own calculus, but we had to have like a starting point for the shtarot. So when it came to Jewish kings, we went with Nisan. That was our internal system because we had to.
That's so dangerous. The rest of the world is setting their calendars on Tishrei.
Yeah.
And we're saying, well, in our internal economy, we're gonna do it in Nisan.
Well, hold on. That's a different question now.
Nobody ever said that the rest of the world did it in Tishrei.
Yeah, that's the thing. We're saying we're numbering the non-Jewish kings' reign by Tishrei. Doesn't mean actually in Persian history they knew anything about Tishrei.
I misunderstood this. I thought you said that the Gentile kings, their year started in Tishrei.
In our system,
That's in our books.
in our books, we say the non-Jewish kings started in Tishrei and the Jewish kings started in Nisan.
That's because people like you were lawyers.
Their books.
No, it's a good
Their
question.
books
But
didn't use our books.
yeah, they well in Bavel Dafka they did, but not later. Not later, right? They have different months, the different system. They're doing a solar calendar, not a lunar. So it's different.
That changed over time.
And that changed over. Yeah. It's for sure.
What's so incredible to me
Good calculation.
is that we are creating our own calendars with respect to the non-Jewish world.
It's how we are ordering time and how we see ourselves in time.
Even
Yeah.
today,
By the-
No, we used to-
But couldn't Larry, what I would answer that is we were the center of the world at that time. I
Geographically.
mean, we were the main, well, geographically, and this was our land, and this is how today, we can't apply today's rules. I think back centuries, we felt differently, I think, about ourselves. Possibly.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
The fact that they, assuming, or they called him kasher, was he allowed into Beit HaMikdash?
No, still not a Jewish person. There were still limitations on that. No. But don't worry. There's another plot twist that I haven't shared with you yet, which is that Daryavesh, same guy, he didn't stay a good guy. Things changed. Hechmitz. He was everybody's favorite in the Jewish community. They had bumper stickers about him. Everyone loved him. And then things changed, and then things shifted. That's the Gemara is going to go next. That he was your friend when he was your friend, but it was politics. And after a point, he kind of drifted. By the by, I was going to throw in this before, but it's not inappropriate to say this is one of the flashpoints with the Greeks. When the holiday of Hanukkah comes about, one of the issues that they decree against is Koresh. How could these Jewish people have their own calendar? They're so disloyal to our way of understanding the world and time and seasons, and they're backwards. And if they haven't figured it out from 332 till 168 BCE, along comes Antiochus Epiphanes IV, the Sheikh Tamya, may his bones be ground up, and he decides, let's make a decree, no more Rosh Chodesh, no more Jewish calendar, and that way they don't have holidays, they don't know when they are, and now we'll push them, right? So Chodesh is one of the issues. It's a flashpoint, and you understand why. The audacity of these people have their own calendar. Well, they're not. Why don't they use our calendar? We're the kings. We have the army. What do they have? Well, never heard of Maccabees before, but they came around after. The Beit Chashmonai didn't exist. So just for consideration. And the Gemara here, second to last line says, Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, Lo Kashya. This is not really a question. It's not really a question that in one context, the dating system of Daryavesh seems to follow the Jewish calendar, and then another one seems to not follow the Jewish calendar. He says, no. Kan kodev sheichmitz, kan la'achas sheichmitz. One is before he did bad, the other is after. Once he messed things up, look at Rashi, hichmitz Nase Rasha, Kshala Ezra Kvar Yichmitz. By the time Ezra went to Eretz Yisrael, he was already machmitz. It was already no good. And he became chametz. But chametz means in positively fermentation, but negatively it means decay, soured. Yeah, soured. But the souring because of the decay. So therefore, how was he demoted? How are the good Jews going to demote him? In the books, it switches his calendar midstream to be counted by the days of Tishrei. Maki Flora of Kahana umehichmitz. Wait, he did. How did that ever happen? Right? After all, the Haktiv doesn't it say next page 4a in the Gemara? Uma chashchan uvnei torin v'dachrin v'amarin la'alavan le'la shemaya chimtin malach chamar umeshach kimei amar kahanaya div Yerushalayim leheve mityahev lehom yom biyom dilo shalu. It keeps going. It's a whole quote here. What is it saying? This king, Daryavesh, when he sent Ezra, he hadn't soured. He told Ezra, take whatever you need. Look at Rashi at the beginning of the page. Give them from me. Take as many doves as you need. Take as many lambs as you need. All sorts of things you're going to take. Take the salt that you need. Take the oil and whatever you're going to need. You take with you. Everything will be fine. And don't forget to give offerings to the God of heaven on my behalf in Yerushalayim. That's what he told Ezra. So what do you mean hechmitz? So the Gemara says, well, not exactly. How come? Let me find it. Not exactly did he have such pure intentions. Amar lo Rabbi Yitzchak, fourth line on page 4a at the end of the line. Amar lo Rabbi Yitzchak, Rabbi mitunach dilahon mehakravin nichochin la'ala shmaya umatzlin l'chayim malka uvenoi umanda avad hachi lav mal yutahi. He says, listen, unfortunately, he says exactly what you're quoting me to show how great he was is actually the burden that you bring to me, I push right back on you. Metunach, Rashi writes, mimasa'ach shebat aleinu l'hashivenu ani meshivcha tshuva re'ei ma katav ba dilahon mahakravin v'gomer umatzin l'chayim malka l'midat shelo l'shem shemaim asa kim lahanato. The psukim keep going and say lehevon mahakrin nichochin lola shmai umatzlayin l'chayim malka uvnoi. You should give these offerings, pray to the God of heaven in Yerushalayim that I will remain the king and my children will be okay. So Rabbi Yitzchak says, you are actually trying to quote this favorably. He was in it for himself. He didn't do it Shem Shemayim. He did it for self-interest. And really, he had already started against the Jews. The Gemara says, V'atanya, but don't we know? Ha'omer sela zelit stak b'shvil she'yichayu banai, b'shvil she'ezke ba'alachayim haba, harizet tzadik gamor. We all know that a person gives tzedakah with ulterior motives, halachically, it still counts, and they're at tzaddik gamor. Even if they said, as they were giving it, this should be so my children should live. This should be so I get olam haba. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Is it tzaddik gamor? So the Gemara says, lo kashya. Kan be so, kan be ovdei kuchavim. That works for the Jewish people. We can say that because in the kernel of the self, there's an element of Shem Shemayim and something like that, and it works out. Yeah, if you look at Rashi, the last of the wide lines in Rashi, Kanli be Yisrael, and the first of the narrow lines in Rashi, Shalibola Shemayim. Ve'en Marian lo b'chayav, eno korei lo tagar, ela tola ha'yisurin ba'avono. If it doesn't work out, he's not going to go against Hashem and say that he's challenging God. He'll say it must be a sin that I committed that causes this to happen. If things won't work out for the idolater, he'll go after God. And therefore, if he makes such a deal with God, we say it's not L'Shem Shemaim and it's no good. That's the answer the Gemara gives. Therefore, I'm taking a comment question, Mark. Therefore, the words of the king sending off Ezra were insincere and already hichmitz at this point, and that's why the psukim say what they say, that the shift in the dating moved from the Jewish dating to the non-Jewish dating midstream, because hichmitz, he was good at the beginning, and then when he changed, they stopped calling him Koresh as an honorific based on his predecessor. Instead, they just called him Daryavesh, his actual name, and that was it. Mark, question, comment?
Yeah. So in the beginning of the secta, we the Masechta asked, why do we have dates? And we had dates because we had this whole concern about post-dated starot and
Yep.
this fluidity here of how we're counting. Moving, oh, he's a good guy, so now we're going to start counting this way, seems inconsistent with the premise that we need this for starot.
Yes.
I'm trying to reconcile this path with where we started in the Masechta,
Yeah.
and wondering how are we ever going to get out of this now? Because now you could have one group saying, well, listen, he's a good guy, we're going to change him. And another group saying, well, he wasn't so nice to us, we're going to keep him here. And now you've got a chulent of starot dating that's just inconsistent with where we started.
Same guy's name, but if was it the year that he went bad? How are you supposed to figure that out? Someone's going to remember.
So now
it was
you would
year
easily
6.
have
Yeah.
you could easily have post-dated or predated starot, which
Right.
would be a bigger problem than
Right. So the
Sorry,
working
sorry.
answer I'll give you with the question is better than the answer, but the working answer I'll give you, this is exactly part of the chaos surrounding exile. We don't exactly, it's murky. How are we supposed to date things? And maybe if this guy's good, we're going to go back to the Jewish system from Nisan. And then he's not good, we're going to go to the not Jewish system. It's like, it's confusing. My understanding, which could be totally wrong, is that they had already shifted really to use the non-Jewish dating. This was all because they're trying to reconcile how come in the book of Haggai, suddenly in that context, about the building of the Beit HaMikdash and Zerubbabel, it reverted back to the old system. But if you look in most of the books, it seems to me, Ezra, Nehemiah, which talk about this story, that's really dating according to the exilic status of things, not the one of Jewish kings. By the way, you know when chaos reigned again? After Beit Hashmonai took over, they said, we're not dealing with the Greek king anymore. That's what he would like. And this whole thing was about Rosh Chodesh, Shabbos, Bris Milah, all different these things that we fought for, we won. So they did it by the Hasmonean kings until there were civil wars between the later Hasmonean kings, and there were 2 kings. And who are you dating according to? And it was very sad. Yeah, and the Rambam writes nonetheless. It lasted. The Rambam writes it lasted around 200 years, which is plus minus around 200 years. The Hasmonean dynasty, and it's enough to celebrate a Hanukkah, even though it didn't end well, but it lasts 200 years. But during that time period, it went. What was the dating there? Are they Jewish kings? Well, they were Jewish. Some weren't so religious, but at least at the beginning. So maybe we went back to Nisan for that, because like now we have independence. Or no, because generally in the world, if you want to do commerce with non-Jewish people, yeah. So there was another system that started already in 312 BCE, which is well before Hanukkah happens, called the Minyan Hashtarot, where they set that as like year 1. And they started counting from there. And then it was 1, 2, 3, 4. And they were using the Minyan Hashtarot till the end of the 11th century in Bavel. So it's a real question here. I don't know if I've answered your question, Mark, or made it worse, but the question is probably better than the answer. It is confusing, and that's part of the feature of it. My hunch is that once the first Beit HaMikdash was gone, they didn't have a Sanhedrin, a Gadol in Eretz Yisrael and Yerushalayim, and then have a king. They just stuck with the non-Jewish dating. Things changed back in the days of Hashmonaim, but it so happens there was still a Navi named Haggai, and as an honorific to this great king who was letting them inaugurate the second Beit HaMikdash, Kates Bavel, Zerubbabel. So here's Zerubbabel. He's right. He's in this pasuk in Haggai. He's in chapter 2, verse 2. Tells Zerubbabel ben Shaltiel, the governor of Yehuda, and Yeshua ben Yehotzadok, the Kohen Gadol, and the remnant of the nation, to say, who's left here who remembers the first Beit HaMikdash? Yeah? And who is left? There's no one left, but there are some. So now, Chazak, Zerubbabel, Neum Hashem. And what should you do? Go, Vasu, Ki ani itchem Neum Hashem tzvakot. Go build it. Build the second Beit HaMikdash. And that's in whose day? Daryavesh's day. Daryavesh is being referenced here, who sometimes possibly had some kind of honorific being called Koresh when he was a good guy. He's not called Koresh in the psukim here, right? Okay, you understand? So we made like a huge cholent over here. We have more to see in the Gemara. I have 5 minutes left. So let's look at the Baal Hamaor for 5 minutes. It takes longer than 5 minutes, but the Baal Hamaor, I'll put it on the screen for those who are at home. The Baal Hamaor essentially starts with the opening premise that he thinks that the Gemara itself has an incorrect girsa, that there's a problem with the manuscript of the Gemara, and he thinks that that actually there are 3 people. One is named Koresh, one is named Daryavesh, and he alleges one is named Artachshasta. That's his claim. on my scan for some reason, not on the photocopied edition.
That's when Ezra got, according to the,
Right,
he got the permission to go to,
exactly. Exactly. I apologize that the scanned version that I scanned in, not like the one I photocopied, is missing the first line. So you got to listen into that. The Baal Hamaor is on the right-hand side. This is after enlarging it. You can imagine how small it was originally in my Gemara. But he writes here, Matzati shibush v'chiluf banuschaot v'gamba perushin v'lefichach kotev k'tchila hanuscha haberura. I found that there was something wrong with the original version of the Gemara, and therefore I saw fit from the correct manuscript that I have to recopy the Gemara based on my understanding of how it flows. We don't have time to see the whole thing inside because he goes through, just to read it first couple of lines, Matkif la Rav Yosef, Chada, the Imkain, Kashu Krai Ahadade, Ve'od Katav, V'shetze Beita Dena V'gomer, V'tanya Ba'ot Azman L'Shana Haba, Ala Ezmi Bavel, V'galuto Imo. These are all things we read tonight. He has another manuscript, it's a different version. How this is organized. Shenamar Vayavoy Yerushalayim Chodesh Chamishi, Midami Hacha, Daryavesh Hacha, Koresh Hacha, Artachshasta. Right? So are they the same? Hacha, Daryavesh Hacha, Koresh Hacha, Artachshasta. The three different kings we mentioned here. So the Gemara, then the Limud, Tana, who Koresh, who Daryavesh, who Artachshasta. Kachia Girsa, V'zeu Perush, and this is what it means. Ki Rav Yosef, Barur Haya Davar Azeh Etzlo, Ki hu Koresh, hu Daryavesh, hu Artachshasta. Van de Matkifla Rav Yosef, and therefore Rav Yosef, since he thinks they're all the same person, so he has a question. The Imkain, the Maninan La LeKoresh, the hu Daryavesh, hu Artachshasta, Minisan, V'lo Tishrei, Ki Nemuchei Karoi B'nevuat Chagai, Kashu Hanach Karoi the Sefer Ezra, the Divrei Nechemi Ben Chachalia. Shenira lanu misham shumona mitishiv lo minisan. Rav Yosef thought they were the same person. That's why he asks, how come in one place the dating goes by Nisan for this person, and elsewhere it goes according to Tishrei for this person? And there is therefore contradiction upon contradiction. Yeah. Shenira lanu misham shumona mitishiv lo minisan. V'ha kaim lanu Daryavesh Artachshasta. Ve'od k'tivei karoi achrinim. The mishame de lo meninan minisan. And so on and so forth. It's a whole arichos. We don't have time to see it in the allotted time here. I've got a minute and a half left. Suffice it to say, he's trying to analyze what is the Gemara here trying to convey. The shibush and the girsa, there's something wrong with the manuscript. So does everybody think that is just they're all the same person? If you skip down in this Baal Hamaor to the widest lines of the Baal Hamaor, and you go to hold on. I'll find the right spot. Don't want to start in the wrong place. To find it, because in this version sometimes it's laid out a bit differently than I had originally seen it. He basically says, hold on. Okay, so if you look at 2 lines up in the narrower lines, 2 lines before the wide lines get super wide. Okay, so he says here basically that there were 2 names. There was Daryavesh and Artachshasta that maybe were interchangeable, but we never found any place where Koresh is added in as also interchangeable. Elamakom echad bilvad. In one place in the Tanakh, it seems to say that. Shenidmelo l'Rabbi Abaye thinks Mishu shenikra b'shem Koresh l'fishay melech kasher shekatav v'shava Yehudoi b'noyin u'matzalchin b'nevuat Chagai Neviah v'Zecharia bar Ido ubanu v'shachlilu mitam Elokei Yisrael mitam Koresh v'Daryavesh Artachshasta melech Paras kev shekatav melech Paras. Well, never Malchei Paras. There's a pasuk which actually uses the expression in one sentence. It mentions Koresh, v'Daryavesh, v'Artachshasta, Melech Paras, the king of Persia. Since it says king of Persia, not the kings of Persia, I'm on the first of the wide lines now. Nira lanu mizeh ki shlosha shemot hayalo. Sorry, for those online, you have no idea what I'm doing here. So here it is. Sorry. Okay. Kevin Shekatov. Can you see the pointer here? Kevin Shekatov, Melech Paras, lo nema Malchei Paras. Nira lanu mizeh. Hayalo of one guy. And he must have been kosher mitchilato at the beginning. Nikra Koresh. And therefore he's called Koresh. Ota Braita Shaninu, Be'ota Zman L'Shana Haba'a, Lamadnu Shnei, hold on, Shemot, Lamelech, Echad, Shem Daryavesh Artachshasta, Mudivi Rabbi Yabo, Lamadnu, Sha'afa Shemash Lisi, Shu Koresh, Ve'in Ze Koresh HaMelech, Shaita Pekida, B'tchilat Malchuto, Shu Hayah HaRishon, Malchei Paras, Shemelech B'Vavel, Achar Daryavesh Hamadai, and we started with this. After Bavel was destroyed, the first Persian king was not Persian, he was Median, because they had a hyphenated name. So Darius the Mede, then Koresh came, and then after Koresh came, let's say, according to Chazal, Achashverosh, Cambyses, then came Daryavesh. So the point here is, this guy who's called Koresh is not the original Koresh, it's really Daryavesh. They kept giving him the old name because it meant the kosher king. V'zeh melech ha'acharon, sheharago Alexandros. This is the latter Daryavesh that was killed by Alexander. Now, there's a problem in this. You understand the problem? The timing. Okay, but that's what they understood. Vehu, okay, Vehu, Haya ben Esther. See? According to this, Kediv Rabotenu. Right. Again, Kediv Rabotenu. V'zeh she'eviu raya alav lomar she'echmitz midichtiv nidbechin di even galal tlata. We didn't read that. We're just going to talk about where later on in the Gemara, we'll get to it, where he really for sure went off the rails about how he wanted the Beit HaMikdash to be built with certain built-in weaknesses, so that if he would ever want to destroy it, it wouldn't be so hard for him to do. So, Afal Pisha him Divrei Koresh Hamelech Harishon, even though they're the words really of the first Koresh, Koshinitza Katuv Be'otam Megillah the Ishtakach Be'achamta Bevirta Di B'madai Medinta Kevan Shesamach Ale Ha'acharon. Since the latter person, namely Daryavesh, was Koresh, Achashverosh, Daryavesh for these purposes, since he relied on the original guy's words, Vitziva. Where are we? Vitziva. L'kaimav, lasot kidvareha, savarna l'mar sheshnei mechmitzu. They both went bad. The original Koresh and the second person who was called Koresh, even though his real name was Daryavesh, they both went bad. La'achar kashrutam. Zewa ola biyadenu lefi medrash rabotenu. Ulefi diktugehem. This is what we would come to according to the medrash of our sages and according to their derivations, their dikdukehem. Now watch the bouncing ball. Avala perush hanachon lefi apshat. But the correct interpretation says the Baal Hamaor, Rabbi Mizrach Levi, according to the simple understanding. Zeshikatuv umitam Koresh v'Daryavesh v'Artachshasta melech paras. When there is a pasuk that says on account of Koresh and Daryavesh and Artachshasta, the king of Persia, Shlosha Malachim Hayu. These are three separate kings. Va'arehu kemosh amar malchei paras. Like it, as if it had said malchei in the plural. It happened to say it in the singular. It meant in the plural. Okay? It said melech paras meant the crown of Persia. It was talking, said the Baal Hamaor. I heard what the Chachamim said. I respect what they said. But I'm telling you, that's all medrash. Pshat, there are three people. Koresh, then a guy named Daryavesh, skipping Achashverosh in the middle, interesting. Then a third person named Artachshasta, who is not the same guy as Daryavesh. There's three separate kings.
Xerxes?
That's another discussion. I can't answer the question. You're going to take me off the reservation. Va'rei hu kemosh amar malchei paras. I'm on the second to last line of that first paragraph of the wide lines. Kikol, next line. Kikol, I got to go to the other side. Kikol echad mehem hayam melech paras. V'shnaim harishonim huzkaru le'inan binyan beit hamikdash bin habayit. Excuse me. Shikoresh hayam matchil v'Daryavesh hayam mashlim. V'samuch lahem, after Daryavesh came another Persian king named Artachshasta HaMelech HaAcharon. She'afhu bana chomot Yerushalayim. He's the one who permitted the building of the walls of Yerushalayim, which came after the building of the second Beit HaMikdash. Kamos mefurash b'divrei Nehemiah, as is explicit in the book of Nehemiah. Uvekulan itkayim nevuat Yeshaya shekatuv ubanu b'nei nechar chomotayach. And in this was the fulfillment of the prophecy of Yeshaya, who said that the foreign children, meaning non-Jews, will build your walls in Yerushalayim. Okay, now look at the last line. Echad me, where are we? Him umalchehem yishartuncha. Right? Right? They will serve you essentially. Artachshasta harishon shetziva levatel melechet beit hamikdash. This is not the original Artachshasta who commanded to cancel the building of Beit HaMikdash. Therefore, these three were mentioned. Why? Why are these three being mentioned? Koresh, Daryavesh, Artachshasta, says the Baal Hamaor, they didn't rule one after the other. They're three separate kings who lived at three separate times. They're in chronological order. There are other kings in between, but these three did good things. And they're not the same person. They're three separate people. And what you read, what we read in the Baal Hamaor, where he's quoting this idea, that actually the order was, first came Koresh, then came Achashverosh, then came Daryavesh, who was sometimes called Koresh when he was a good guy, but then reverted to be called Daryavesh, who was, according to Chazal, the son of Esther Hamalka, the union of Achashverosh and Esther Hamalka, whose son is Daryavesh. The Baal Hamaor says this is amazing, beautiful, and it is correct. It is true on the level of Medrash. But on the level of Pshat, there was a king named Koresh. There was another king later named Daryavesh, who was never called Koresh, not once in his life. Not as an honorific, not as a nickname, not as what they said at the Shabbos table. He was never called that. There was a Koresh. There were other kings in between. There was a Daryavesh. There were other kings in between. There was someone named Artachshasta. And there might have been kings later than Artachshasta until we finally get to 332 BCE, the arrival of King Alexander of Macedon in the Holy Land. The Baal Hamaor here, I believe, is crucial to at least opening the door to understanding in a Rishon that what you're reading in this Gemara, with all of its many layers of problems, is correct as an internal system to make coherence, to try to understand how are we going to date our documents. But on the level of Pshat, the Baal Hamaor, I mean, the man was alive in the, like I told you, the 12th century in Provence. He's not claiming, he's saying this is not the Pshat. He writes this, right? He says everything that we have is Lefi Midrash Rabbeinu Lefi Diktukayim. It all works out. Aval HaPerush HaNachon Lefi HaPshat. Tells you that. And he's telling you that even in the Gemara, this is going to be very important for us to understand like how these things work out, because it is the Persian Empire, very, very complicated. Try to understand what the years and the dating are. And Chazal were not trying to be historians. They're just, it's not their role. Midrashically, everything and everyone is connected, and it's an amazing thing. And it's not that it's not correct. It is correct. It's true with a capital T. But it's on the level of Medrash, not on the level of, it teaches important lessons and the structures of things. And but even the Baal Hamaor is willing to say that's not the Pshat. Now, why are Chazal doing this? Rabbi Baal is trying to get out of the pickle of how could you argue, right? That in one place they called him Koresh, in another place they called him Daryavesh. Oh, it's just the same guy. You understand? Okay, it is labyrinthine. We'll have to stop here. We'll pick up, God willing, next week. I expect that we will be learning on Monday night, barring some unforeseen circumstance, which in this day and age, who even knows? But I'm expecting next Monday night, 7:30, we'll meet again. And I wish everyone early Hanukkah Sameach, good things. So there you go. That's it. Tomorrow night in Masiv Haruach. Tomorrow night, everyone's cordially invited. We thank Art and Shira for the sponsorship. Appreciate it very much. And Tain Telemat is tomorrow night. Right. Okay. Ad Khan for tonight. We'll gather again in health and happiness. Thank you for joining. That's it. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. And I was supposed to announce that I'm giving a shir on Hanukkah in my house on Thursday night. I'm so discombobulated. Every year I give it. The first night of Hanukkah in memory of my Bubby in my house. So stay tuned. There'll be an announcement about it. It'll be at some halacha, but some hashkafa as well. That's probably going to be at I think 7:45 or something like that Thursday night. Stay tuned. Stay tuned. It's always exciting with us. It's always fluid. Okay, I'll get it straight one day. There'll be some donuts. There'll be donuts. A dinner, no, but sufganiyot. Yeah. But stay tuned for the formal announcement tomorrow. You'll be surprised.